The Reagan shooting. All network tapes clearly, you can clearly hear the sound of 7 shots. Bam, 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 bam. Hinckley had a 6-shot revolver. How do you get 7 shots out of a 6-shot revolver? And where did it come from? Up there circled in red, the bullet that struck Reagan was at a downward trajectory. Go back and check the media. They accurately reported that. And Hinckley, though, is standing level with him over here in the crowd, back over here beyond that policeman. Up here is a sliding glass door with a human figure crouched behind that door. Was this the person who actually shot Reagan? We don't know, because there's never any investigations, because all that's just conspiracy theory. But of course Reagan was shot, and for months the person who was really in charge was George Herbert Walker Bush. You're going back to Korea, you find out that Russian generals were running the Korean War on both sides. Does that make any sense? And yet the bulk of the Allied troops was our guys, United States military, supported by our tax dollars. We're really being taken, folks. Go all the way back to World War II. Again, I noticed it was mentioned here at this conference that, well, everything would have been okay except Hitler was the bad guy, and he kind of screwed everything up. Well, let me tell you, folks, do your homework. Hitler didn't just suddenly appear. Hitler, number one, was a military intelligence agent who was assigned to infiltrate the Nazi Party. And he went back to his superiors and said, well, went to this meeting, there's only about 9 guys there, but you'd like them, because they want to rebuild Germany, and they hate the Jews, and they want to rearm, and they want to repudiate the Versailles Treaty. So his superior said, that sounds pretty good. Here's some money, go back and help out. So they created Hitler. And then as he began to gain more power, who was behind him? Another secret society, the Thule-Gesellschaft, or the Thule Society, made up of some of the leading industrialists, leading intellectuals in Germany at the time. People, and also people who had an intimate working knowledge of the occult. All right? So now we can see that all of these secret societies have been working along. And it was the same thing back during World War I. Same people ran World War I. It's amazing, but at the time of the Russian Revolution, where was Lenin? He wasn't in Russia. He was in Switzerland. Where was Leon Trotsky, the communist key philosopher? He wasn't in Russia. He was in New York City working for Wall Street capitalists. And they gave him money, and they gave him all kinds of support to go into Russia and take over a popular uprising and change it into a communist government. Lenin was the same thing. We all know that he was put on a sealed railroad car and traveled through wartime Germany that was at war with Russia, and was sent on into Russia to take over the government and set up the communist system. And one of the people who helped facilitate that was a leading banker in Germany who also was very highly connected with German intelligence, and that was a fellow by the name of Max Warburg. Now, don't you find it passing strange that in World War I, Max Warburg, who was head of German intelligence and a big leading banker there in Germany, his brother, Paul Warburg, founded the Federal Reserve System in our country, and at that time was head of the financial end of World War I for the United States of America. Does nobody find that amazing? Here he is, Paul Warburg, and here's the house on Jekyll Island where the plans were laid to instill upon us the Federal Reserve System, which is neither federal nor has any reserves. All right? It is a system of 12 banks. It's a system of 12 banks that are in turn owned by other private banks. And in fact, most of the studies that have been done show that the majority of ownership in the banks that control the Federal Reserve are held by people who are not even Americans. Think about that one. I could get into money and the whole thing, but let's keep going. Here's the original Federal Reserve Board, and there's old Paul. He headed up the original Federal Reserve Board. And here we see Woodrow Wilson and Colonel House and his wife. And this is where it begins to tie into the older secret societies, because as I pointed out, Trilateral Commission connects to the CFR. The Intercorps leadership is Bilderberger. The CFR was created right after World War I by Colonel House, Bernard Baruch, and others to try to sell us on the idea of globalization. And these folks had been members of the old Cecil Rhodes secret society called the Round Tables. Here is a cartoon from 1911 showing Karl Marx shaking hands with J.P. Morgan, George Perkins, Teddy Roosevelt, John Ryan of National City Bank, John D. Rockefeller, and Andrew Carnegie. They financed communism. They created it. Why? So they could play both ends against the middle. Think of Cold War. And now it's over with. And think of the billions of dollars that were squandered on that Cold War. Think of what this country could be today if we'd spent that money building schools and upgrading education, upgrading health facilities. No, that was not going to make them money. So see, back in 1911, those old folks knew better about what was really going on than we do today. And this is just a little graphic showing the New World Order and how that it tracks on down. You can take a look at that. I do want to mention the Hegelian dialectic. That sounds pretty fancy, but basically all it is just action, response, and then synthesis, whatever you work out. You all do this all the time. You and your wife or husband decide you want to go to the movies. One of you says you want to go see movie A. The other one says, no, I don't want to see that. I want to see movie B. Okay? Well, the one who wants to see movie A, that's thesis. That's his thesis or her thesis. One says, I want to see movie B, that's antithesis or antithesis, the antithesis. Okay? Now, then you work it out. If you're like me and my wife, what we usually do is end up going seeing movie C, which is second choice for both of us, but it's one we can agree on. That is synthesis. And that's how it works. And all Hegel did was simply kind of work out this formula for human interaction. But where the secret society folks took a leg up on it is they figured out you don't have to wait for a problem and then offered a solution, and then how it works out is what you get. You create a problem. You create a problem, then you offer the solution, and then whatever's worked out, you got it. When the Murrah Federal Building was bombed, they had anti-terrorist legislation pending in Congress, and some of it was pretty draconian. It was going to just shred the Constitution, and most people were going, wait a minute, I don't know. They weren't going for it, and it was hung up. It wasn't going anywhere. Boom, federal building in Oklahoma blows up. I'm not going to go into that, but most of you know there's a whole lot more there than Timothy McVeigh and his little fertilizer bomb, okay? But boom, it goes up. All right, now you got a problem. And what's the solution? Got to pass all this anti-terrorism legislation. But then that's a problem. So what's the solution? Well, you work on it, you water it down, and it still got passed. Not to the extent they originally wanted, but it got passed. And it's the same thing that we knew the communists did for years. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This stuff they've rammed through over the past year, Homeland Security, Patriot Act. You hide and watch as the years drove on, unless they pump us up again with some other terrorist act, which they're liable to if we start balking at everything. But courts will begin to throw some of that stuff out, and the thing will start coming back into balance. Already there are 60 cities in the United States that have passed ordinances that are ordering their local police and law enforcement people not to enforce Homeland Security and Patriot Act provisions because they're unconstitutional. Of course, you don't hear much about that through the mass-controlled corporate media, but it's happening, and there will be a backlash. It will come, and things will balance out a little bit, but see, it's already on the books. And this Homeland Security thing, once you create that whole level of bureaucracy, I guarantee it'll never go away.